I'm 20 years old, named Cody, and I'm still figuring things out in life. I live with my father, Richard, who's an architect. He's always busy with work, caught up in projects. I lost my mother when I was young, so for a long time, it was just me and my dad that was until a few years ago when he remarried. Her name is Claire, and she's nothing like the stepmom I imagined. She's young, smart, and she feels more like a friend to me than a mom. But lately, things have gotten complicated. Let me tell you about the day that changed everything. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating, true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end, because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. It all started like any other quiet afternoon. My dad was away for work, and Claire was out running errands, leaving me at home by myself. I don't mind being alone. I'm used to it by now. I spent the afternoon in my room just lounging around and looking at my phone. The house was so peaceful, with no noise at all. I had just gotten out of the shower, still damp, and was lying on my bed, absorbed in my phone. It was quiet. Too quiet, the house seemed still, almost unnervingly, so I shook off the feeling but couldn't ignore it. That's when I heard a soft knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart skipped a beat. My first instinct was to put my shirt on, but I hesitated. Who would be at the door before I could move? The door creaked open. It was Claire standing there in the doorway. Her eyes were locked on mine in a way I hadn't seen before. She was casually dressed in a light sweater and jeans. Her dark hair hung loosely around her shoulders. She looked unsure, like she was waiting for something. I didn't know what to do. I was caught completely off guard. "Sorry," she said softly, her voice gentle but carrying a tension I hadn't noticed before. I didn't mean to interrupt. I immediately jumped up, trying to grab my shirt and pull it over my head, but something in her expression made me stop. She wasn't angry or upset. She was just watching me. Her gaze lingered on me, and it felt like everything had changed in that moment. "Claire." I stammered, my heart racing. I wasn't expecting anyone. She didn't say anything at first. She just stepped into the room slowly, like everything between us had shifted. She took another step toward me, and I froze. My pulse was pounding in my chest. I felt exposed, not just physically, but emotionally too. My mind raced. Should I apologize? Should I tell her to leave? But before I could do anything, she spoke again. "You should have locked the door," she said, her voice soft, but with something more behind it. I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. There was something pulling us together that I didn't understand, making it hard to breathe. She was standing so close now that I could feel the warmth of her body. It was overwhelming. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. Then, before I even realized it, my hand reached for hers, shaking slightly. She didn't pull away. Her gaze never left me, and it felt like she was giving me permission. It was like she was waiting for me to make the first move. I took a step closer, my body moving almost by itself. Her eyes were locked on mine as I reached up and touched her face, my fingers grazing her soft skin. The connection between us was undeniable. The tension between us was suffocating. Just as I leaned in, ready to kiss her, the sound of footsteps in the hall broke. The moment Claire quickly stepped back, her face flushing. "We can't," she whispered. "This isn't right." I stood frozen, my heart pounding. She was right, and we both knew it. But I couldn't ignore how I felt. Something had changed between us, and I wasn't sure I could pretend like nothing had happened. Before I could say anything, she glanced toward the door and then turned back to me. "We'll talk later," she said quickly before turning and leaving the room, her footsteps fading down the hall. I stood there in shock, unable to fully process what had just happened. A part of me felt relieved, but another part of me wanted to follow her to figure out what it all meant. I sat back down on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. Nothing felt the same anymore. The next few days passed slowly, like I was stuck in some kind of fog. I couldn't stop thinking about Claire. What had happened wasn't just a brief moment. It was something more. the way her eyes held mine, the way she seemed to breathe faster. When we were close, it all felt too real to ignore. But the worst part was that I couldn't talk to anyone about it. My friends wouldn't understand, and my dad certainly wouldn't. Claire was still my stepmom. We both knew it was wrong, but the tension between us was impossible to escape. I tried to distance myself, telling myself it was just a moment of weakness, something we would both move past. But every time I saw her, I couldn't ignore the way her gaze lingered just a second too long. It was like she was waiting for something, but I wasn't sure what. One evening after dinner, my dad was working late. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through the channels when Claire walked into the room. She was wearing a loose sweater and leggings, her hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She looked different, more distant, but also somehow more attractive. "Hey," she said, sitting down beside me on the couch. "Mind if I join you?" My heart raced, but I tried to stay calm. "No, of course not," I replied, my voice giving away my nervousness. She sat close, her shoulder brushing mine. I could feel the warmth of her body, and I had to force myself not to think about that moment in my room. We sat in silence for a while, but the air between us was heavy, filled with unsaid things. I could feel her presence more than I could focus on the TV. Then she spoke softly about the other day. I stiffened. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation. "Claire," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know what happened. I don't know why she interrupted, her hand brushing mine. The touch was electric, like a spark in the air. She didn't pull away. Her fingers gently traced the lines of my hand. "I know it's complicated," she whispered, barely audible, "but I can't stop thinking about it, about you. Cody." My heart was racing, my ears ringing. I had never heard her say anything like that before. It felt like time had stopped, leaving just the two of us. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw the vulnerability in her eyes. She was just as conflicted as I was, maybe more. But there was something else, a deep yearning, a desire that was impossible to ignore. "Claire," I said, my voice shaky. "I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is, but I can't stop thinking about you either." She leaned in her lips, almost brushing my ear. "We can't keep pretending. This isn't happening," she whispered. "Can we?" I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to pull away to tell her it was wrong, but the truth was, I didn't want to. I didn't want to deny the way I felt. Before I could say anything, she closed the gap between us, kissing me gently. At first, it was the softest, most tentative kiss I'd ever had. I froze, my entire body still. The world seemed to fade. As I kissed her back, my hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened the tension between us, crackling in the air. Her lips were warm and soft, and I felt something. I couldn't name a deep longing to be closer to her, to lose myself in the moment. She swiftly withdrew, though, her eyes wide with fear. "This is not possible." "Cody," she said softly, "it's wrong." I didn't know what to say. A part of me knew she was right, but another part didn't care. All I knew was I couldn't stop wanting her. "Claire," I said, my voice low, "I don't care, I just need you." She looked at me, her gaze softening, but then she looked away, regret written on her face. "I can't," she said, trembling. "I can't do this to your dad, to you." I understood, but it didn't make it any easier. I wanted her more than anything, but the consequences of crossing that line were too much to bear. She quickly stood up, running a hand through her hair in frustration. "We need to stop," she said firmly. "This can't happen again," and just like that, she was gone, leaving me in the quiet living room. My heart raced, my mind spinning from everything that had just happened. The silence felt suffocating. I sat there completely, still trying to process everything that had just happened. Part of me wanted to follow Claire to talk to her, but I knew it was a bad idea. I couldn't stop thinking about that kiss, the way she felt in my arms, the warmth of her body against mine. It was as if I was addicted to the feeling, but at the same time I couldn't ignore the guilt creeping in. I had always looked up to my dad, trusted him, and now here I was, about to betray him in the worst way possible. I tried to racked myself, but it was useless. Every time I saw Claire, I felt that same pull, that same connection. It wasn't just physical. It felt deeper, like something I couldn't escape. It was as if every part of me was drawn to her, even though I knew it was wrong. A few days later, I found myself in the kitchen making breakfast. The house was quiet. The only sound, the sizzle of bacon cooking in the pan. I hadn't seen Claire yet, but I knew she'd be up soon. My heart raised just thinking about her. I tried to push the thoughts out of my mind, but they wouldn't go away. The memory of our kiss, the way I felt when she was near it was overwhelming. Just as I was finishing setting the plates on the table, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around to find Claire standing in the doorway. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was dressed casually in a blouse and jeans. To me, though, she might as well have been wearing a dress made of fire. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft, but there was an underlying tension in it that matched how I was feeling inside. "Good morning," I replied, trying to sound calm even though my heart was pounding in my chest. She stepped closer, her eyes briefly glancing at the food on the table before looking back at me. There was a moment of silence, a heavy pause in the air. Then she spoke again. "You've been avoiding me," she said. Her tone barely a whisper. It wasn't a question, but more like an accusation. I froze. Had it been that obvious? Was I really avoiding her? "I'm not avoiding you," I stammered. But deep down I knew I was. It was hard to face her after everything that had happened. But the truth was, every part of me wanted to reach out to her to feel that connection again. She took a step closer and I could smell her perfume, a soft mix of jasmine. It made my head spin. "You know this isn't right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We can't keep doing this. Cody." I wanted to respond, to tell her that I couldn't stop how I felt, that I didn't want to fight it anymore. But instead I just stood there, frozen, my heart torn between what was right and what I wanted more than anything. "I don't know how to stop," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Claire's expression softened, but there was a sadness in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. She reached out her hand, brushing lightly against my arm. The touch sent a wave of emotion through me. "You have to stop, Cody," she said quietly, her eyes searching mine. "This isn't just about us. It's about your dad, too. It's about everything we've built. Do you really want to destroy that?" Her words hit me hard, like a punch to the gut. For the first time, I realized what was at stake. My dad, the man who had always been there for me, who had worked so hard for us. How could I betray him like this? But even then, the pull I felt toward Claire didn't fade. It was still there, urging me to give in. I could feel the battle rising inside me between my heart and my conscience. "I don't know if I can," I said, my voice bitter. "I don't know how to stop feeling this way about you." Claire sighed deeply, her hand falling to her side. "You have to, for your sake. For mine and for your dad." Her words were like a cold shower, waking me up to the reality of what I was doing. I couldn't keep chasing something that was never meant to be. I couldn't keep risking everything for a fleeting moment of passion. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I just don't know what to do anymore." "You don't have to do anything," Claire replied softly. "Just let it go. We have to let it go." Her words cut through the tension that had been hanging in the air, and I finally understood. I was on the verge of making a decision that could tear everything apart. I couldn't do that, not to my dad, not to her, and not to myself. With a heavy heart, I nodded. "Okay," I whispered, "we'll stop. We have to stop." But as I turned back to face her, the look in her eyes told me that we both knew this wasn't over. The feelings hadn't disappeared. The temptation would still be there, waiting for us to slip. However, I realized at that very moment that we would never be able to undo the mess we were about to make if we didn't stop now, and I wasn't prepared to live with that sort of regret.